fact, this one is timely because Russia is actively invading Ukraine and everyone's like, hey, why? Which is a great question when there's not a super great answer, but let's get into history and context and how we got here. So let's first go back to talk about the Soviet Union. It existed from 1922 through 1991. It was enormous, literally the largest country in the world, spanned 11 time zones and 8 million square miles, big old world superpower, took the lead in going to space, had the world's largest standing military, second largest economy, very big deal, very powerful, much history. Then in the late 80s, there was a lot of internal political and economic and ethnic disintegration, probably big haircuts in the Soviet Union. Basically, a lot of parts of the country were operating as very independent states, and they were like, hey, hi, what if instead of being a state to you guys, we did our own thing? Wouldn't that be fun? So Lithuania had a vote and said, yes, we want to be our own thing, and that led the charge, and the KGB was like, nope, don't like that at all, and tried to take over the government and reverse all of that, but it didn't work. Then Latvia and Estonia declared their independence, then Armenia and Georgia and Belarus and Ukraine, and in the end, 15 total Soviet states chose to break away and become their own country in 1991. This really weakened the Soviet Union, which is now Russia, and the US became the only world superpower. So let's zoom into Ukraine. In 1991, Ukraine is its own country. There are a lot of cultural and historical divisions and a weak state structure because it's a little newborn baby country. Especially in the east and southern Ukraine, there's a lot of Russian speakers and Russian pride, especially in Crimea, which is important. There's tension, and all this kind of came to a boiling point in 2014 when there were protests and conflicts, and when the president at the time, who was very pro-Russian vibes, was like, nah, I don't want to be associated with the European Union, and a lot of Ukrainians, especially in central and western Ukraine, were like, what the heck, we want to be more like the West, and that president was forced out of office. And then some stuff was leaked, and we found out that Russia was funding some of the pro-Russian unrest in Ukraine and taking over administrative buildings and doing a lot of stuff. Then in February of 2014, Russian military forces without insignias on their uniform came into Crimea, which is here, and used cyber warfare and basically took it over and annexed it, which means they took it back and declared it to be formally part of Russia. The Ukraine declared Crimea a territory temporarily occupied by Russia, then Russia added more military to the region and nuclear threats, and that was kind of that. And then there was some kind of fringe and not a big thing pro-Russian protests and groups in the southern and eastern Ukraine, which is this area, which is the Donbass, and then Putin started referring to that area as the new Russian, which is what? But it kind of made it more of a thing. But anyway, then Russia started funding these separatist groups and sending in Russian special agents to kind of foment the pro-Russian vibes, and these two areas of Donetsk and Luhansk got into like an actual armed conflict, though most of the insurgents were Russian volunteers who were openly recruited for this in Russia. So Russia comes in and they're taking over Donetsk and Luhansk like military occupation style. Ukraine no longer has control of these regions. Tension is growing. Russia is using disinformation tactics, irregular fighters, regular Russian troops, and conventional military, so they are just really going for it. And then Russia is like, they're Ukrainians, they're just pro-Russia, we're not involved. But they had like Russian guns and tanks and uniforms, and you guys get it. It was a lot of Russians. So they're fighting, and then a ceasefire was signed on September 5th called the Minsk Protocol, but both sides broke that a whole bunch, and then they made a new ceasefire, and then they both immediately broke that. Anyway, it's been a war zone basically until now. So let's talk about now. Since early 2021, Russia has been building up a huge military force on the border, and then February 21st of 2022, Putin announced recognition of these two areas as independent republics, which is just that they're not that, followed by an order to deploy Russian troops, and then on February 24th launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Russian invasion is largely based off the supposed pretext of protecting Russians, and this has clearly been in the works for a while. Russia has been giving out Russian passports to Ukrainians and clearly encouraging the separatism, but Ukraine is a sovereign nation who have overwhelmingly voted that they want to be independent of Russia. They're like, hi, we've done this, we're not into it. And also one more enormous thing, Putin is very, very upset about the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO, which Ukraine really wants to do. NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It's made up of a ton of European and American countries. It was established after World War II, and it's basically a system of collective security, which means if any one of these countries gets invaded, they all mutually respond. Ukraine has been an openly aspiring member, but Putin does not want that at all and has asked NATO to promise to never ever accept Ukraine as a member. Basically, Putin is like a very controlling ex-boyfriend who can't let go and doesn't want their ex to move on ever. Also, while we're here, this is a literal tweet from the Ukrainian government Twitter, and if that doesn't just sum it up. Also, they posted this one. It's amazing. So that in a nutshell is why we're here. Honestly, it doesn't make a ton of sense. Basically, Putin wants to reestablish Russia as the Soviet Union mega power it once was, and he's doing it at the cost of a ton of innocent lives in literal war. I'm thinking this might be an ongoing series talking about the situation and why we're here, so if you have more questions, leave me a comment and let me know.